Hello everyone. The purpose of this video series is to help beginning gardeners learn how to prune and train their deciduous fruit trees. In this introductory video, the basic structure and growth pattern of shoots will be described. Such an understanding will allow us to manipulate the structure of the developing tree to suit our needs. Other videos will focus on specific methods of pruning and training, and on details of flowering and fruiting that are relevant to keeping fruit trees small, healthy, and manageable. What are shoots? A shoot consists of a stem, buds, and leaves. Stems consist of nodes and internodes. Nodes are where leaves, buds, and reproductive organs attach to the stem. Internodes are the intervals between the nodes. Here a leafy quince shoot is shown. This picture was taken during the growing season, so we might call this growth the current season's growth. Note the node and internode organization of the stem. Here is a node, which bears a single leaf. Most deciduous fruit trees have one leaf per node, which is called alternate leaf arrangement. There are some fruit trees, such as pomegranates, olives, and guavas, that have two leaves per node, termed opposite leaf arrangement. Here is an internode. Note its length. If the internode were shorter, the two flanking nodes would be closer together. When shoots are first formed, the internodes are extremely short, but as the shoot ages, they elongate and draw the leaves further apart. Here is a leaf. A leaf consists of a stalk, termed the petiole, a flattened blade, and sometimes a pair of appendages at the base of the leaf on either side of the petiole. Such appendages are termed stipules. It turns out that most of the deciduous fruit trees are in the rose family, and most members of that family bear stipules. Here is another view of the shoot. However, the stipules have fallen off. Note the leaf axil, which is the upper angle between the petiole and the stem. In the axil is located a bud, which is currently dormant. The shoot is composed of repeating units of internode, node, leaf, and bud. As you move closer to the tip of the shoots, internodes get shorter and leaves and buds get smaller. In the late fall and winter, shoots are usually in a dormant condition. Such shoots lack leaves, but their scars remain on the shoot surface. The petiole leaves a leaf scar behind, and the stipules leave narrow stipule scars. Within the leaf scar are usually visible tiny dots called bundle scars, which mark the positions of the vascular bundles that pass from the stem to the leaf. What are buds? Buds are embryonic shoots. Buds can be classified by what they produce or their position on the shoot or root. Leaf buds grow into leafy shoots. All fruit trees have leaf buds, also called vegetative buds. A terminal bud, or pseudo-terminal bud, occurs at each shoot tip. These buds cause the shoot to elongate. Terminal buds are also called apical buds. A lateral bud occurs in the axil of each leaf. There can be more than one lateral bud per node. Branching of the shoot is usually caused by the growth of lateral buds, also called an axillary bud. All buds possess a microscopic growth zone at their very tip, called an apical meristem. Cell division occurs in the apical meristem. In the dormant season, buds are usually covered by protective bud scales which are modified leaves. There are other kinds of buds that are relevant to shoot growth. Latent buds, also called dormant buds, are lateral buds that don't grow into shoots the year after they are formed. Therefore, these buds just sit and rest. Latent buds may appear on the surface of the shoot, or they can become buried in shoot tissue as the shoot thickens by secondary growth. You will not see such buds on the trunk or large limbs, but they are probably present. Adventitious buds are buds that don't form in the leaf axil. They can be on the roots or shoots. On roots, they often grow and produce suckers at the base of the trunk. These are a nuisance and are usually removed. This is a twig from a sweet cherry tree. It is in dormant condition, so the leaves are missing. Also, the buds are not active and are covered by protective bud scales. You can see small dots on the stem surface. These are called lenticels, which are regions of loose cell structure allowing gases to diffuse into and out of the stem. In several species of fruit trees, such as cherries and peaches, the shoot tip possesses a terminal bud. Lateral buds are also present, one per node. Leaf scars are also visible, and stipule scars are present, but too small to see. In this picture, the bud scales of the terminal bud are easier to see. Species with a true terminal bud, like cherries and peaches, exhibit monopodial growth. Usually in the spring, the terminal bud will start to grow, and a new shoot, the current season's growth, will elongate. That new shoot will have its own nodes, internodes, leaves, and lateral buds. At the end of the growing season, the new shoot will go dormant and lose its leaves, etc. What about the lateral buds? During growth of the current season shoot, some lateral buds may start growing and form branches. Also, some of the lateral buds on the previous year's shoot may grow to form branches. How much branching and where those branches form is dependent on the species involved. For example, cherries will branch very little, whereas peaches branch a lot. This is the tip of a plum tree twig. Note the bud at the tip. It appears to be a terminal bud, but actually it is a lateral bud. Notice the tip scar. The tip scar is actually the real tip of the shoot, where the terminal bud should be located. In some species, such as plum, apricot, and persimmon, the shoot tip actually dies just before dormancy begins, leaving the uppermost lateral bud in place. This bud, now called a pseudo-terminal bud, replaces the terminal bud, and subsequent shoot growth will result from its growth. This pattern is called sympodial growth. When the terminal bud of a monopodially growing species, such as cherry, is cut off, we are in effect forcing sympodial growth, since the lateral bud just under our cut will serve to elongate the shoot. Where is the leaf scar on this twig? It would be on the other side of the twig, here out of view. This is a lateral leaf bud of a cherry tree. Note the red bud scales and leaf scar. In this picture, the bud scales have been removed and the embryonic leaves, called leaf primordia, are revealed. The rod-shaped yellow bodies are glands on the leaf margins. Primary versus secondary growth. During the growing season, terminal or pseudo-terminal buds grow and produce new shoot tissue, including nodes and internodes, leaves, and lateral buds. Such primary growth elongates the shoots. Tissues produced by primary growth are fairly soft and flexible. Soon after primary growth has commenced, stems get thicker and stiffer by producing woody tissue and bark. This is secondary growth, which is produced by the vascular cambium. The vascular cambium is a thin layer of actively dividing cells that resides just under the bark. Therefore, young shoots are thin, soft, and flexible, and as they age, they get thicker and more woody. Woody plants are thicker at their base and thinner as you approach the shoot tips. This is because the base of a shoot is older than the tip. Older tissues have had more time to add wood. Here is a diagram illustrating primary and secondary growth. On the left shoot, the apical meristem of the terminal bud divides to produce new cells that are positioned below the meristem, which raises the meristem up higher. An analogy would be a person being the meristem, and when they jump up, they place a brick under their feet, which raises them up higher. The brick represents the new cell. Another jump and another brick, and they are even higher. Therefore, shoots elongate from their tip, not from their base. That's why the nail driven into the base of the shoot does not rise as the shoot grows. Contrast this form of growth with the growth of a fingernail or a blade of grass, which elongates from its base. After a period of growth, the shoot on the right results. Notice the increase in length and the elongated inner nodes. In the older tissues at the base of the shoot, secondary growth takes place as the vascular cambium begins to divide and make new cells. The vascular cambium is shaped like a cylinder and places new cells to the outside and inside of the cylinder. Cells placed to the outside form the inner layer of the bark, and those placed to the inside form wood. The buildup of secondary tissues increases the diameter of the stem. As the diameter increases, the vascular cambium increases its circumference to maintain a continuous cylinder of meristematic cells. During the dormant season, both primary and secondary growth stop. Growth resumes when weather conditions are favorable for growth. Apical dominance. During growth, the terminal bud produces auxin, a hormone that travels down the stem by gravity and inhibits growth of the lateral buds. The suppression of shoot branching by the terminal bud is termed apical dominance. The degree of apical dominance varies by species and by the orientation of the shoot. When there is strong apical dominance, shoots elongate rapidly and don't branch much, like in sweet cherry and persimmon. When there is weak apical dominance, elongation is reduced and branches readily form, like in peach. A vertically oriented shoot has more apical dominance than one oriented at a 45-degree angle. A horizontal shoot has little apical dominance, and it will elongate very slowly and branch a lot. Removal of the terminal bud is the most common method of reducing apical dominance. It may be called pinching, heading, decapitating, shearing, etc. If the shoot tip is cut or broken off, the source of auxin is removed and the lateral buds near the cut can grow into branches, shoots. This method forces a rapidly elongating, unbranched shoot to branch. The new branches will grow in various directions depending on the orientation of the lateral bud from which they grew. Here is a diagram illustrating apical dominance. Auxin produced in the terminal bud travels down the shoot and suppresses lateral bud growth. After the tip of the shoot is cut off, apical dominance is released and lateral buds grow to form branches, which are new shoots. Note that each branch has the same structure as the original shoot. The new branches grow at various angles to the original shoot. In this picture of cherry shoots, 2 cuts have been made over time to force lateral bud growth. Shoot A is the oldest shoot shown, and the arrow shows its original direction of growth from its terminal bud. The yellow line shows where the cut was made to remove the shoot tip. The scar left by this cut is still visible. This cut was made during the winter. Shoot B is the new branch that grew after shoot A was cut. It started growing in the spring just after the first cut was made. Shoot B arose from a lateral bud that was located right here. And this arrow shows the new shoot's direction of growth from its terminal bud. The next winter, shoot B was cut here. This cut removed the apical dominance of B, allowing a lateral bud located here to grow out into shoot C the next spring. At the base of shoot C, you can clearly see the bud scale scars that remain after the lateral bud started growing. Such scars should also be present at the base of shoot B, but are hard to see here. Notice that we can force shoot growth in the direction we wish within limits. If we can find a lateral bud that points in the direction that we want the new branch to grow, we can cut the shoot just above that bud. This permits training of the growth into the shape we desire. Another picture of cherry shoots. Shoot A, which was growing in this direction, was cut here in the winter, and lateral buds here and here grew into new shoots the following spring. Notice the lateral bud scale scars here and here. This is the base of a plum tree. 7 years before this picture was taken, shoot A was cut here in the winter to remove the terminal bud. The next spring, the B shoots grew from lateral buds. You can see that secondary growth has thickened these shoots considerably. The original cut is still visible. Here is a peach tree. 7 years before this picture was taken, shoot A was cut here during the winter. An outward-facing lateral bud then grew the next spring into shoot B. The scar from the original cut is still visible, but the wound has almost completely healed. Another method of reducing apical dominance is by bending a vertically oriented shoot to an angle or even horizontal. Since auxin moves down the shoot by gravity, changing the orientation will reduce the auxin flow to the lateral buds. Another effect of bending vertical shoots to an angle like 45 or 60 degrees is that the connection of the branch to the main shoot becomes stronger, and therefore the branch can bear more weight, like from a load of fruit. Horizontal or near horizontal branches will likely produce water sprouts, which are rapidly growing vertical shoots with long internodes. These usually arise from latent buds. Usually such shoots are removed since they will cast shade on the lower branches, reducing fruiting lower in the tree. Dormancy and regrowth. Deciduous fruit trees undergo dormancy in the winter. Buds are protected by their bud scales. When growth resumes in the late winter, early spring, the bud scales of active buds loosen, spread outward, and eventually fall off, leaving a series of bud scale scars encircling the stem. When looking at a woody shoot, the location of bud scale scars is where the terminal or pseudo-terminal bud was located during the winter in past years. These sets of scars can be followed down the shoot, and the interval between adjacent sets is the amount of growth occurring during a growing season. This is a dormant cherry shoot in the winter, showing the transition from one year to the next. Here are the terminal bud scale scars, which is where the terminal bud was located 1 year before this picture was taken. The shoot tissue above the ring of scars grew the previous growing season and is called 1-year wood. Below the scars is the tissue that grew 2 growing seasons ago. It is therefore called 2-year wood. For example, if this picture was taken in January of 2018, the 1-year wood formed during the spring and summer of 2017. In the winter of 2016/2017, the terminal bud was located here. The 2-year wood formed in the spring and summer of 2016. This is what the transition would look like with sympodial growth. Here is an apricot shoot in dormant winter condition. The bud scales of the pseudo-terminal bud are still attached and are visible here. This bud has grown into the 1-year wood above. Also, notice the tip scar, which is still visible. Given time and secondary growth, these structures will become harder to see. Here is a close-up of the pseudo-terminal bud scale scars of a plum with the 1-year wood above and the 2-year wood below. This diagram summarizes the growth pattern resulting from alternating dormant and growing seasons. On the left, we have a 3-year-old shoot in dormant winter condition. By searching for the rings of bud scale scars, each growth season interval can be identified. The dormant 1-year wood is also called a twig. Also notice that as the tissue gets older, it gets wider. The following growing season, the terminal bud on the 1-year wood will grow into a leafy shoot referred to as the current season's growth. This terminal segment of newly formed tissue can also be called a branchlet. To be clear, the phrase current season's growth or the term branchlet are used during the growing season. You would not use these in the dormant season. Likewise, the word twig should be used in the dormant season. Otherwise, these terms can get confusing. Long versus spur shoots. In a young tree, juvenile stage, shoots have long internodes and produce primarily leaves and leaf buds. These shoots are termed long shoots. Over time, parts of the tree become mature and begin bearing buds containing flower primordia and therefore flowers and possibly fruit. In some fruit tree species, such buds are borne on short, stubby shoots termed spur shoots. These have shorter internodes than long shoots. Spurs usually develop on 2-year wood and older. Peach is one of several species that generally lack spur shoots. If a dormant tree possesses spur shoots, a simple way to tell long and spur shoots apart is to examine the internode length. On the left is a long shoot. Notice the internode length. On the right, 3 of the lateral buds of the long shoot have grown into spur shoots. Notice how short the internodes are. In some species, spur shoots are very compact, whereas in other species they are longer. Spur shoots generally develop slowly. Spur shoots may or may not show branching. For example, cherry spurs appear unbranched, whereas apple spurs are branched. Here is an example of long and spur shoots on a cherry tree. The main branch bearing the spurs is a long shoot. Notice the internode length. The spur shoot bears many flower buds. Each bud is attached to the spur shoot at a node. Therefore, the internodes on the spur shoot are extremely short. Here is an example of long and spur shoots on a plum tree. The spurs appear unbranched, as in the cherry tree. Here is a wider view of long shoots bearing many spur shoots. Plum is on the left and apium is on the right. Here and here you can see the stubby spur shoots attached to the tall ascending long shoots. Pome fruit trees, like apples and pears, have long-lived branched spur shoots. Here a crabapple spur system is shown. Summary. The shoots of woody deciduous plants have a repeating modular structure. Apical dominance is a process having a significant effect on shoot elongation and branching. Removal of apical dominance by pruning or bending shoots promotes branching. Such behavior can be used to control the shape of a growing tree. The alternation of dormant and growing seasons produces segments of growth that each correspond to 1 year of growth. Mature tissue often develops spur shoots which bear flowers and fruit.